Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating. It's ancient wisdom, but it might just flip how you think about success and, well, effort. You know that feeling, right? Pushing, grinding, working like crazy, thinking more effort means more success. We've all done it. But what if working too hard, that really intense push, was actually holding you back? And, how do some people seem to achieve amazing things almost easily? We're going to unpack this idea today, and honestly, it made me rethink a lot.
That's right. For this deep dive, we've looked at some really insightful bits from a YouTube video discussing Chapter 23 of the Tao Te Ching. And this isn't just some dusty old text. It offers really profound insights into our modern struggles, productivity, burnout, what real achievement looks like. So our mission today is basically to pull out the key nuggets from this source, a kind of shortcut to understanding effort, staying power, and sustainable success.
Okay. Let's just dive straight into the core paradox, because this is where it gets really interesting, I think. The main idea is that too much effort, the source uses the Chinese term 用, it actually stops long-term success. It sounds weird, doesn't it? I mean, how many times have we heard, try harder, work tirelessly, push through? It's like the standard advice. But what if that exact pushing, that relentless force, is what messes things up?
Yeah, exactly. And to get this, we need to go right to the source. Tao Te Ching, chapter 23. It says, 不要风不容, which translates to, wild winds do not last a morning, nor does a torrential rain last a whole day.
Okay, so what's Lao Tzu really saying?
Yeah.
It's not just about the weather, obviously. My first thought was, a hurricane doesn't last forever. But it feels like he's pointing to something bigger, right? Like anything super intense, super urgent, super fierce, it just doesn't last. It burns out fast.
Precisely. And the source material gives some great examples to make this clear. Think about typhoons. They're incredibly powerful, right? Intense, destructive even. But they usually blow through in less than a day. Their very intensity means they can't last long. Now, contrast that with what the source calls Jiangyun's beautiful rain, that gentle, steady drizzle. It's barely noticeable sometimes, but it can last for over a month. It's that contrast that's key.
Yeah.
The flash-in-the-pan force versus the slow, steady, almost effortless endurance.
That's a really vivid contrast, and I bet you listening can already connect this to your own life. I know I can. Think about those times you pushed yourself to the absolute max, maybe for a deadline or fueled by caffeine. What really stands out about how long you could actually keep that up? For me, it was always followed by a crash. Always.
And that brings us neatly to the first sort of positive takeaway here. Why too much effort often backfires, and why a more relaxed way, surprisingly, works better. The source uses a simple running analogy. If you go all out, like a 100-meter sprint, you use up all your energy super fast, you cover a short distance, then you're done, wiped out. But if you walk or jog gently, you can cover thousands of meters, maybe tens of thousands. The total distance, the sustained progress, is just vastly different.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the source talks about this concept, heart power, which really clicked for me, especially thinking about burnout. It describes effort as this conscious thing we do that actually uses up this heart power. And the key thing is, this power isn't endless. It's presented as like a non-renewable thing, like a battery that runs down.
That's a really crucial point. When you force things too much, you feel tired fast, physically, mentally, even emotionally. That initial excitement, the spark that got you going, it just gets burned up, depleted. And eventually, you might even start to dislike or resist the very thing you were trying so hard to achieve. It's like constantly redlining your car engine. You're just asking for a breakdown, and you probably won't get where you want it to go.
It's funny because the source also mentions that the Tao Te Ching itself doesn't even have the word K, ingli. That's the common word today for effort or diligence. That word is everywhere in how we talk about work and achievement. It's kind of startling to hear it questioned like that. We're basically taught newly is always good.
It is, yeah. We're culturally conditioned, really, to apply newly to absolutely everything, studying, our jobs, even relationships. But the source suggests that even though newly sounds positive, it actually feels heavy. It creates this intense pressure, and it burns through our limited mental and emotional energy really, really quickly. Think of newly less as just effort and more like constantly clenching your jaw, your fists, like you're gripping life too tight.
Or holding your breath.
Exactly, like perpetually holding your breath. And the faster you burn that energy, the faster you decline. Long-term just becomes really hard.
Wow, yeah. Perpetually holding your breath. That really paints a picture. It makes me ask, then, if newly isn't the answer, what is? The source talks up this relaxed state.
What is that? And how do we actually find it in our, usually crazy modern lives? It definitely sounds better than pushing all the time. Well, think about breathing. It's totally natural,
Right.
mostly effortless. We don't even notice we're doing it most of the time, but it keeps us going. That's kind of the ideal state for action, where things flow without that conscious strain, where you're not fighting yourself. The source gives two main ways to get towards this relaxed state. First, align yourself with natural laws, with the underlying patterns of how things work. These patterns don't change, so if your actions are in sync with them, your direction is basically correct. Success becomes more about how fast or how smoothly, rather than if. But if you go against these fundamental laws, your direction is just wrong. And no amount of effort, no newly, is going to fix that. It guarantees failure eventually.
That makes total sense. It's like trying to swim against a strong current versus swimming with it. One way you exhaust yourself going nowhere, the other way is so much easier. You're working against the flow otherwise.
Exactly. And the second path is, well, simpler in a way. Do what you love and what you're actually good at. When you genuinely enjoy something, engaging with it consistently just naturally builds your skill. You get better without forcing it. This kind of work isn't driven by that draining, forced effort. It's driven by belief. Neon is the word the source uses, like an inner conviction or passion. This gives you natural, ongoing motivation. You keep improving. Like a writer who loves writing, they don't usually have to force themselves to write. The enjoyment and belief pull them along. And importantly, their heart power gets replenished, not just drained.
Okay, so gentle, continuous effort builds things up. But what about when we do see those huge, sudden bursts of energy or activity? Is that always a good sign? This is where it gets really interesting, because the source flips it and talks about those explosions as maybe a warning sign.
Yes, absolutely. This is the other side of the coin. There's a natural principle here. When things suddenly burst or peak really dramatically, they're often actually nearing their end or decline. It connects to that old saying, when things reach their peak strength, they begin to age. And also the idea of kuigwan, hingzao, sometimes called the final radiance or return of light before death, like a last intense flash of energy before collapse.
My mind immediately jumps to stuff like tech bubbles or maybe fashion fads, and the source actually gives a very concrete example: the real estate market.
It does. It points to the period around 2017-2018 when real estate prices just shot up incredibly fast in some places. It looked like this massive, unstoppable growth. So investors piled in, expecting it to continue. And ordinary people felt this pressure, this fear of missing out, thinking prices would only go higher. So they bought in, sometimes stretching everything they had.
Yeah, I remember that feeling.
Right. But we know what happened. That boom was intense, but short. Prices then plummeted, and lots of people got trapped, the source says. Tatalao, stuck at the peak with properties suddenly worth way less. It's a perfect example of torrential rain doesn't last a day. All that built-up energy gets released, it gets depleted, and the decline follows.
I can think of another example, maybe closer to home for listeners, like in the workplace. What about when your company suddenly starts cracking down super hard on attendance, on performance metrics, micromanaging every little thing, that sudden intensity?
The source suggests seeing that kind of sudden, intense clampdown as a potential prelude to a storm.
It often signals that the company is actually struggling, that decline is happening, and big changes like layoffs might be coming. The advice, based on this Taoist wisdom, is to recognize those signs for what they might be, and if you can, maybe start looking for an exit before things collapse completely. It preserves your options. So the real skill here is telling the difference between genuine, steady growth and that kind of final flashy surge, like a last gasp before things turn down. It's about spotting the pattern, really.
And that's exactly where the wisdom of what the source calls experts, or you could say high achievers, comes in. These people seem to intuitively understand knowing when to stop. They don't get caught up in the frenzy or the emotion of a peak moment. They make a rational choice to pull back or exit near the top before the downturn. It's about preserving themselves, their resources, their well-being. They recognize that return of light before death pattern in different situations.
And what's really cool is that this knowing when to stop, it's not presented as some super complex skill you have to learn from scratch. The source implies it's almost an innate wisdom we all have. You know, like when we say enough is enough or quit while you're ahead, we kind of know it deep down, but maybe ambition or fear makes us ignore that inner voice.
And activating that inherent wisdom, listening to it, helps us avoid those major pitfalls. Ultimately, it leads to better, more sustainable success. It's about understanding the natural rhythm of growth and decline and moving with it, not just fighting it until you burn out.
Okay, so let's bring this all together. What does this actually mean for you listening right now as you handle your projects, your career, maybe even personal stuff? As we wrap up this deep dive, maybe we can restate the two big takeaways from understanding this torrential rain doesn't last a day idea.
Yeah, I think the first one is try not to be so fixated on effort, on grinding as the only way. Instead, maybe experiment with approaching things, your work, your challenges, with a bit more of a relaxed, natural attitude. Seek that flow state where things happen without constant forcing. It saves that vital heart power. And the second takeaway is to really activate that built-in wisdom of knowing when to stop. Learn to recognize the peaks. Notice when energy has been super intense for a while, and consciously choose to leave some room to maneuver. Pull back sometimes. By doing that, you preserve yourself. It lets you go further in the long run, find new opportunities, and achieve more lasting things. It's not quitting, it's smart strategy.
And when you can manage these two things, the relaxed approach and knowing when to stop the source suggests you'll find yourself achieving more, but with surprising ease, less stress, and definitely more sustainability. It's like a different recipe for success.
So here's a final thought to maybe mull over. Think about something in your life right now where you feel like you're applying too much effort, that constant tense pushing we talked about. What might actually happen if you tried, even just as an experiment, a more relaxed, natural approach? Or, looking at it the other way, is there any situation that feels like a sudden, intense peak right now? Could it be time to recognize that peak and maybe choose to stop or pivot or just ease off a bit?
Really powerful questions to consider. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into some truly counterintuitive but potentially life-changing ancient wisdom. We hope these ideas spark some useful reflection for you. Until next time.